As promised, in this exercise, I'm going to show you how to set up some guidelines to mark exactly how our auto numbers should be aligned. And we're going to do this in a very precise way. I could just grab a guideline from the vertical ruler and slop it in there and just say, well, right about there, at this point, we're aligning with the period after the 10, so that's about where my 9 needs to be aligned as well. The problem is I have no idea where that really is, and when I go to modify my step style, then I need to be able to enter exact numbers, and I don't have any frame of reference for this location. So let's go ahead and give ourselves a frame of reference. Does that make sense? I'll go ahead and delete that guide just by pressing the backspace key. What I'm going to do is I'm going to identify this point right there as the location for a guide. Then I'm going to identify exactly the point at which all of these lines line up with each other as the point for another guide. And then we'll locate a third guide, basically with precise reference to the second guide. You'll see, but that's going to give us exactly a sense of where this needs to be. So step number 1 is to check how this text right here is aligned. I'm going to go ahead and double click in it in order to activate the text. And if you're looking at the paragraph options up here in the control palette, you'd go ahead and switch from A to this little paragraph icon right there. I've also given you keyboard shortcut with my D keys to switch back and forth between those, and that's the F4 key. We'll switch you back and forth. InDesign ships with its own keyboard shortcut that's more elaborate, and I just think F4 is easier. Now, notice up here these options. Notice that we have a first line indent of 1p6, which is 1 pike is 6 points, incidentally. I could replace it with 0.25 IN like that, which is 0.25 inches, or I could do 0.25 and a double quote character. It's hard to see, but that's a double quote character. And then if I press tab, it's going to get replaced with 1p6 because they're exactly the same thing. Now, this guy down here says negative 1p6. So it basically means all of the rows inside of this paragraph are aligning 1p6, that is 1/4 inch, in from this guideline, this violet guideline right there, that column guide. All right, so let's go ahead and get the black arrow tool. Click off the text to make it inactive. I'm going to drag a vertical guide from the vertical ruler on the left-hand side of the document over to the second violet guideline, this guy right there, the one right next to the 9, and release. And your guide, if things are set up the way they're set up for me, and I believe they are, because I've established all the new guides inside of the document as being orange, this new guide should show up as dark blue. And the reason is that's the inverted version of orange. If I click off the guide, it's orange. If I click on it, it turns an inverted color, which is dark blue there. All right, I want to make sure the guide is dark blue. That indicates it's selected. And I want to move the guideline in exactly 1p6. 1 pike is 6 points, or if you prefer, 1/4 inch. Now, I don't know exactly how far that's going to be. I could try to watch the rulers, except look at my little tick mark up there, that dotted tick mark. It's not aligned exactly with any of the ruler tick marks. So what I need to do instead is I just need to pay attention to the X value up here in the control palette. Currently, it says 16p 7.2. So what I need to do is add 1p6 to 16p 7.2. So I whip out my calculator, right? No. You have InDesign do the math for you. Enter a plus character. Isn't that nice? We're just going to add 0.25 inches. I can even add a different unit of measure. So 0.25 and double quote. So you press shift in the quote key. For a double quote character, that's inches. Or if you prefer, you could enter IN like that. Either way is going to work for you. And rather than pressing the enter key, which will move the guide, that would be the return key on the Mac. That'll move the guide to this different location. I want to keep it there at its original location as well, so I want to clone the guide. I'll undo that modification, and I'll enter that same thing, plus 0.25 inch, double quote for inch, and then I'll press Alt-Enter or Option-Return on the Mac in order to clone that guide to the new location. All right, so now that we've done that, I want to create another clone of the guide that's just nudged in. Let's go ahead and scroll down here to the point where a period occurs after a double-digit number. So to roughly this location here, just a little bit right of the period. And I'm going to do that again. I want to be very precise here. I'm going to do this by pressing Control-C, Control-V. What I just did, that's Command-C, Command-V on the Mac. I just copied and pasted a new copy of the guide just in that same location. So you can see if I move it off here, I've now got 2 guides at that one location. I'll go ahead and undo that movement. Make sure that you have a dark blue guide indicating that it's selected. Now, press the left arrow key a few times and count as you do it. And I'm going to press the left arrow key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 5 times pressing the left arrow key moves that ruler guide, that vertical guideline there, 5 points to the right, because by default, InDesign nudges selected items 1 point at a time, 1 point per every press of an arrow key. And so I now know that this guy is 5 points inward. That's where I want it to be, so that's good. Now I have a frame of reference, don't you see? Now I'll go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of the page. I'm going to grab all 3 of these guys. I'm going to marquee around them down here at the bottom of the page. And I'm doing that at the bottom of the page, that is, so that I can make sure I'm only marqueing the guides, not objects. So I'll select those 3 guides, Control-C, Control-V again. That's Command-C, Command-V again. That pastes new copies of the guides at that location, all 3 of them together. And then I'll drag those guides over to the right, all the way to the right-hand page. Notice I'm dragging, by the way, from the leftmost guide. I'll drag over here so it snaps into alignment with the left edge of the right-hand page like so. And now I know where the number 1 needs to be as well. So I've got guides on both pages that are marking exactly where the numbers need to align. We are going to implement that alignment, all that work, but it's precise work. And hopefully you learned a thing or two about doing math in InDesign and, of course, moving guidelines around. That work will serve us well as we actually align the numbers ever so precisely, of course, in the next exercise.